There is a woman in the story of Eden who isn't in Genesis. Somehow, she still became Adam's first wife, the mother of demons, a creature that hunts in the dark, and centuries later, a symbol of freedom. None of those are the same story. So which one is true? Maybe none of them. Maybe all of them, 1 century at a time. Her name is Lilith. Let's find out how she got so many faces. Open the first page of this story, and something strange is sitting right there, in plain sight. God created mankind in his own image. Male and female, he created them, together, in the same breath. Turn the page, and the story starts over completely. Now there's only one figure, Adam, alone, walking among animals that have already been named, still waiting for a companion who hasn't arrived yet. And when she does arrive, she's built from something taken out of him, not formed beside him. 2 creation seems, and they don't tell the story in the same order. Later readers would see a question hiding inside that gap. If the woman in the first account and Eve in the second weren't the same woman, who was the first? Genesis never says. It doesn't even give her a name. The silence just sat there, in the oldest book in the religion, unexplained for centuries. If she existed at all, even for a single verse, where did she go? Then, centuries later, someone finally decided to answer it. The text is called the Alphabet of Ben Sira, a strange, satirical Jewish work written the better part of 2,000 years after Genesis. It was never scripture, never part of the accepted canon. But it's the first surviving text we have that gives this woman a name and casts her as Adam's first wife, Lilith. According to this story, she was made from the same dust as Adam, at the same time, by the same hands, which to her meant one very simple thing: equal footing. Adam disagreed. He expected her beneath him, in the bed they shared, and in everything else about how they lived. She refused. Not with violence, with an argument that should sound uncomfortably reasonable, even now.
Why should I lie beneath you, when we were both made from the very same earth? We are equal.
Adam wouldn't hear it. He tried to force the matter, the way a man certain of his own rightness usually does. And when reasoning failed and force failed, Lilith reached for the one thing left that Adam had no authority over at all. She spoke a name she wasn't supposed to know, the sacred name of God itself. And the moment it left her mouth, wings tore open across her back, and she simply flew out of Eden, before anyone could stop her, before Adam could finish whatever argument he thought he was about to win. Think about what actually happened in that scene. Not a woman punished and cast out by God. A woman who left, entirely on her own power, the instant she was told her worth had a ceiling on it. Adam complained. He'd been given a wife who wouldn't listen to him. So 3 angels went after her, Senoi, Sanzanoi, Semangaloth, tracking her all the way to the Red Sea, where she'd already built a new life apart from Eden, apart from him. They found her there, surrounded by spirits of her own kind. They came with an order: return. She refused. They came with a threat. 100 of her children would die every single day for as long as she stayed away. She refused again. Instead, she made a promise of her own, and it's the one detail every later legend clings to. She would take her revenge not on Adam, not on the angels who'd threatened her, but on human infants and on women in the pain of childbirth. The very moment of new life would become the place she struck. We started this act feeling something close to respect for her. We're ending it, recoiling from her. And that whiplash is the point. The same story, told across a handful of paragraphs, just turned a woman who refused to be dominated into a threat parents warned their children about for 1,000 years afterward, hanging protective amulets over cradles to keep her out. Was that always going to be the ending? Or is there something underneath this story that made that turn feel necessary to whoever was writing it? Here's what almost nobody watching a Lilith video ever gets told, and it changes the shape of the story we just watched. The alphabet of Ben Sira, the wife, the refusal, the flight, the curse, was written somewhere around the 8th to 10th century after Christ. But long before anyone made her Adam's wife, the ancient Near East already feared creatures whose names and stories may lie behind her. More than 1,000 years earlier, Mesopotamian folklore already spoke of a night demon, Lilith, said to prowl the edges of human settlements after dark, blamed for miscarriage, for infant death, for illness with no visible cause. She turns up on incantation bowls, buried under the floors of homes, wrapped in spirals of protective text meant to trap her like smoke in a jar. She turns up carved in relief, winged, standing on the backs of lions, with the taloned feet of an owl instead of human ones. None of it has anything to do with Adam. None of it has anything to do with Eden. Whatever this figure was, she isn't a fallen woman. She's simply something people were already afraid of, long before Genesis was finished being written, let alone reinterpreted. There too the night creature shall alight, and find for herself a resting place. Isaiah 34:14. Scripture brushes against her exactly once, one contested word, in a prophecy about a wasteland so complete that only desert spirits would want to live there. No wife, no Adam, no Eden. Just a name already familiar enough to Isaiah's audience that the prophet never explains who or what he means. So look at the timeline. Some version of this demon may already have been feared for close to 1,000 years before anyone first suggested she used to be somebody's wife, which raises an uncomfortable possibility. We may not have watched a woman become a monster. We may have watched a monster get handed a woman's face and a grievance to explain it, long after people were already leaving amulets by their children's cradles to keep her out of the house. So go back and look at Act 2 again, knowing what we know now. Maybe the story was written backward. Maybe the demon came first, the fear, the amulets, the dread of something that killed in the dark, and the woman came after. The refusal, the equality, the flight. An origin story built to explain a monster that already existed. A reason handed to a fear that never used to need one. Which means the version of Lilith modern audiences find most inspiring. Proud, equal, unwilling to kneel, might be a folktale's attempt to make sense of a fear that came first and needed a reason second. That doesn't make her deserve the fear. It just means we may have gotten the order of her own story backward the entire time. So, was Lilith ever really a woman who was wronged and turned into a monster? Or was she always the fear first, waiting 1,000 years for someone to finally give it a name, a face, and a reason to forgive it? Maybe there was never one Lilith. Wife, exile, demon, symbol, monster. Which one was real? Maybe the frightening answer is that every one of them was.